Welcome back to Study on Spotlight. And today we have a special guest from Cardiff Sixth Form College, from Henrietta. And today we're going to talk about a very serious topic, I should say, is how to get into a top university. So, well, it still sounds serious to me after graduating many years. So would you like to introduce yourself first of all, and then we would talk about the journey and the process required.
Yes, of course, Jade. It's lovely to be here today, and thank you to you and Dadi for having me. But my name is Henrietta Lightwood, and I'm the Global Director at Cardiff Sixth Form College, which means I look at the kind of the admissions of pupils coming to what is the number one school in the UK.
Thank you. So we're talking about applying to university. Well, I'm pretty sure every single high school student, it doesn't matter whether you're in Hong Kong or in the UK or anywhere around the world, it's the milestone when you come to the end of the high school journey. So throughout the process, I just say a lot of students would think what grade matters because that's the most obvious, the very superficial evidence that's going to get you into university. But what else actually the universities are looking for, and how the school, like students, should prepare for that?
Yeah, well, as you say, I remember vividly applying to university and being absolutely terrified by the prospect. And I think the good thing is that some of these top schools are now getting very, very good at it. And Cardiff is particularly good at it for students who want to go and do these really difficult subjects like medicine and engineering and finance that are very competitive. So, yes, of course, grades matter is the first thing. And also, but these days, the top universities, and by the top universities, I'm not just talking in the UK, actually, but also the US, Australia, depending on where people want to go, whether it's Stanford, whether it's Oxford, whether it's Imperial College, they're all really looking, first of all, for students to have A's and A stars at A level. Now, at Cardiff, because we know this, we actually study 4 A levels instead of 3, yeah. And we're looking absolutely, as you know, kind of 91% of our students got all A stars and A's in all of their subjects this year, and it is important, but it's not the only thing. So, first of all, really, looking at which universities is the very, very key aspect of it, because there's a lot of universities around the world. They offer different courses. They have different modules per course. So really what we do is we sit down and design an individual program for each of our students.
Right.
And we meet with them every 2 weeks and we work out exactly what it is they want to do and how we're going to get them there. And actually, this is nothing to do with the academics. So this could be, for instance, right, okay, you want to study chemical engineering at Imperial College. What extra awards can we get you, kind of involved in? Is it, scientific Olympiads or mathematical challenges? Those things which prove that you've gone above and beyond the curriculum. It could be things like, let's get you some really good work experience. So for instance, during October and May and February half terms every year, we actually bring in 90 different speakers from industry to talk to the students. Because there's such a range of careers and it gives them that breadth and that general knowledge. But it could be, for instance, we might get them to go and work with someone like British Aerospace on how to design the inside of an aircraft, or GK Engineering or Renishaw Engineering. So we're looking at those engineering companies that we can help the students to go and get some work experience from. So they're developing their understanding really of the career in which they're going into. But it also could be things like, okay, fine, we do some international work experience. So this year we're taking our students, for instance, to Sri Lanka and to Tanzania, where again they can see how engineering is working in different countries, and we take them again there. That's so interesting, and I think is very unique actually to Cardiff.
It is, because like for students, especially when you study in a place, so often you kind of being in that enclosed environment and having that kind of international prospects and see how things are work differently around the world, isn't it?
Well, it's just so interesting, isn't it? Because culturally, things do work differently, and because quite a lot of our students are looking, probably not necessarily to even just stay in the UK or even in Hong Kong, they will be working globally. So to have that kind of global perspective is really, really important. So, as well, the other kinds of things that we do, we do a lot of critical thinking classes, for instance, weekly. We do a lot of things like pre-university courses. So if they've got a particular passion for something, we will extend them actually beyond A levels, which is really interesting, and get them involved in a certain aspect of engineering or medicine or whatever it is that they're interested in. I think one of the things that Cardiff does exceptionally well actually is extended project qualifications. Now these, as you know, are worth another kind of half an A level in terms of UCAS points. But this year, we've had students at our Cambridge campus, which has been unbelievable, who have we've got one guy from Italy who designed a nuclear fuser reactor as his EPQ. Amazing girl from Angola who built an algae fuel cell to power a mobile phone. We had a lovely boy called Ibrahim from Lagos. He built a levitating train. There was a girl who's actually got a place to do medicine at Cambridge University this year. She wrote her EPQ on stem cell therapy and as a cure to Alzheimer's disease. And it came from her own passion because one of her grandparents had Alzheimer's, the other one had dementia. She'd seen her grandparents go downhill and she thought, what can I do to help? And so that's when that passion transmits itself to those top universities. And I am talking about the top ones here, the G5 universities or the Ivy League. That is the kind of stuff that really gets people past that interview, really into actually having an offer. And that's the difference. And it's things that are not the grades. The grades will get you into the interview. But the actual offer will get from the extra stuff that you take part in.
So it's the passion that they're looking at and the self-motivation.
When you look, we survey the universities. When you look at kind of the top things that they're looking for, and I do this, and tell people all exactly. First of all, obviously, you've got to have a very good grasp of English and communication. But a passion for the subject you want to study comes really high up the list. Durham, for instance, when we were talking to Durham about it, they said, that's what makes the difference about a student really, really achieving when they come to us at university. And making all the difference of getting that kind of high 2-1 grade or that high, or that high first grade. That's what makes the difference. And I think it keeps people going as well. If you're enjoying what you're doing and you're loving it and you're showing an interest in going beyond it, I don't blame the universities. I would be choosing that person too. I think it's very, very attractive.
Yeah, it is. And especially with the UK curriculum is designed in that way, to kind of narrowing the student subjects option, from GCSE 8 to 10 or maybe more subject options, then to down to 3 to 4 A-level subjects. That's the main reason they're focusing on the things that you want to do and you love, actually.
Well, it's interesting, actually, because often I say to people in Hong Kong, and I think they don't realise it sometimes, if I can have their son or daughter from a GCSE, I've got a lot more of a chance to get them into those very top universities, because some of it's just time, isn't it? It's being able to get all of these extra things that you want to do into the curriculum, as well as getting them the grades that they need. And so, we start even from GCSE actually on a 5-term enrichment programme. So what we're doing in that, so this is right from 14 years of age, we're developing their skills of project management, communication, teamwork, entrepreneurship, and even things like performance. So our drama department, for instance, which Cardiff is not necessarily known for, our drama department will take the students and they'll show them how to perform at interviews. That's not just useful at university. That's useful when you come into life and doing your careers, isn't it?
Like when you're doing presenting
presentation skills, whatever it is. All those things, they're really helpful. And sometimes, people in the East are very, very good at, resilience, hard work. But sometimes their presentation skills, we need to help them with that and give people confidence. And people think that Cardiff is all about academic results. Actually, that's only very much one part of what we do. A lot of it is about helping kids mature, helping them find their path, helping develop those key skills which will give them resilience in life and enable them really to, when things don't go so well, how do they pick themselves up? How do they keep going? How do they have that self-belief that actually this career is going to be good? You think about medics. They work so hard. It's long hours, it's tiring, it's very, very fulfilling and valuable. It's not an easy path. And it's very competitive. And, sometimes things don't go right. Sometimes you don't get the marks you want. You don't get the work experience you want. And so you have to pick yourself up and keep going. And that's a lesson for life, really.
Yeah. So you mentioned about it requires early planning and of course the valuables that you just mentioned about. So when should students really start to plan? Especially when you're asking, you touch on from the very beginning, which university you want to go, what program you want to study, what requirement, what they're looking for. So when is the most ideal time to start that preparation?
Well, we start it really the very first week that they join us at Cardiff Sixth Form College. When a student comes to Cardiff, the first week is what we call, it's basically an enrolment week, if you like. And one of the things we do in that week is that we sit every student individually down with one of our, and we look at, right from the beginning, their subject options, what their dreams and aspirations are, where they want to go. And we start really planning that journey. There's actually a lot of students at Cardiff, because they're the kind of kids that come to Cardiff, they're fairly ambitious, they're fairly motivated. They're actually kind of focused on where they want to go. Not everybody is, however. sometimes it takes people a bit longer to actually work out that path and know. And that's why exposing young people to as many different careers as we can is really, really vital. Because, I have had students who've come in and been convinced that they're going to be an engineer, and halfway through to go, oh, actually, no, I want to be a medic. So we've even had to change A-level subject, and catch people up. There's things that happen. A lot of people do know what they want to do. So then really what you're doing is you're going through what we call the UCAS and university preparation, which is, and we do that completely at Cardiff. So parents, please don't worry. You haven't got to do any of this. It's all done at Cardiff. But basically, and with experts, people who really understand it. So, they'll look at all the different options. So say if you want to go to medical school, for instance, which a lot of students do, there's about 30 different medical schools in the UK. What's the difference between them? How do they teach? Because somewhere like Cambridge, they'll do all the theory up front for the first 4 years. Somewhere like Cardiff University, again, very good for medicine, week 2, you're on the wards, you're doing it, So it just depends on what kind of style suits you as well.
Right.
And then it's how the university courses are put together, the different modules. So you can't just choose a university, you then have to go behind it. And that's what we go through with the students, looking at what kind of modules do you want to do? Is this where you want to go? How does it work? Most of the medical hospitals, universities have to be tied to a hospital, for instance. So facilities are also important because, again, when you're choosing a university, are you going to be in city? Are you going to be a campus type university? Where do you want to be? That's just in the UK, but, do you actually want to be, studying economics, at, I don't know, North Columbia University, whatever it is. So you have to take everybody, and that means that our career staff have to be really, really well versed in what the universities are looking for. So we do a lot of work, for instance, with Hong Kong University and the Chinese University of Hong Kong, for instance. In fact, 14.5% of the non-JUPA students in Hong Kong for medicine come from Cardiff Sixth Form College, which is incredible, really, isn't it? But, we've worked a lot with those universities. We understand what they're looking for, and internationally, they like Cardiff students because, we've had quite a lot who've gone on. I think 21 went on this year, for instance, to Hong Kong universities. So it's about an individual approach. And everybody's different. And then what you do is you sit down and you say, okay, fine, you want to go to these competitive places. What else can we add to your application and how can we add to it? And then we look at, there's a lot of very interesting university courses. We get people involved in things like TED Talks, which is interesting. So a lot of research. It may be skills and things like, which you can get from debating or Model United Nations, for instance. It may be, as I say, it might be performance skills. It might be ways in which they might be very scientific and going to something like biomedical science. So we might be putting them together with other students to work on team working and project skills, for instance, because project skills are very important. Something like biomedical science, you're working together as a team. So, and it's also about making sure that, when they come to their interview, they can prove that they've got these skills. That's why we do this enrichment course right from 14, because then they've got actually kind of solid, if you like, demonstrable evidence of how they've got these skills. Yeah. And, and it is about
skills. It kind of requires time to build up that kind of skills as well.
It really does. So for instance, we had 14 students that went on to Oxford and Cambridge this year. I think the majority of them came to us at GCSE. Okay. And the reason being is that we've just got that extra time. And also sometimes, when you do the DSE curriculum, for instance, here in Hong Kong, quite a lot of people don't have GCSEs. And it's remembering that GCSEs appear on your UCAS statement. Yeah. And if you've got someone who's got 6 A stars and someone who hasn't got any GCSEs, the universities therefore have more confidence, naturally, that the person with 6 A stars is going to be the person that might be able to kind of cope with the level of, education on their course.
Yeah, especially when you're applying for the UCAS, you apply with the previous grades. So having that previous official evidence that will convince the university that you have the ability to do so.
Completely, especially when it is competitive. So, and that's another reason why both at our Cardiff and at our Cambridge campus, we actually sit our students in the AS exam. For Cardiff, it's the old system; they do AS anyway. But at Cambridge, we've deliberately introduced, externally assessed AS exams at the end of the first year, because again, I think it really helps the universities see the difference. Yeah. So another thing that's happened, I think, which is really interesting, is our Cambridge campus has also, they run a program called the Cambridge Edge. And the whole point of the Cambridge Edge is that it's meant to give people the edge by being in Cambridge. Now, Cambridge, as we know, is very well known for the 31 university colleges, and it is the top university in the UK. So what we do is that we take our students to lectures at Cambridge University, and we invite university professors in to give our students lectures as well. And they honestly, that some of the stuff that they learn is just, oh goodness, way above me, Jade, completely. Very clever stuff in physics, amazing stuff in forensics, really, really interesting subjects. But also, Cambridge is like the Silicon Valley of the UK. So there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies, there's big, research companies, a lot of very clever people are in and around Cambridge. So we get our kids to go to these businesses, to go and learn from them. And it's really made a lot of difference. So I'll give you some examples. So the guy who built the nuclear fusion reactor, he worked with a professor at Cambridge University, exhibited at the Cambridge Science Festival. Now, schools don't exhibit at the Cambridge Science Festival. This is top universities. So there was all these universities and Cardiff Sixth Form College. And then basically from that, he ended up meeting the head of engineering at Bristol University. He got given a year's internship in their engineering department, and he wants to do aeronautical engineering. Bristol is really good at aeronautical engineering. They have British Aerospace in Bristol. He's doing a year's internship with them now, and he will apply to Cambridge for aeronautical engineering next year.
Right.
This child is, this young person,
How
he's
old
set
is
for
he?
life. Well, he was 17,
my
I mean,
goodness.
amazing kids, but if you're surrounded by all these other interesting kids from the world, it lifts you, doesn't it?
It is, but especially at the age of 17, when everyone's just looking at a book, still like readings from books, the knowledge from it, you having resources and advantage, being inspired from the very top and beyond, like.
Yes,
and
I think the head is very good. The principal at Cambridge is incredibly good, because how easy would it have been for him to say, you're designing a nuclear fuser, that's incredibly dangerous, we can't do that in a school. But he didn't. And instead, and I think it shows the mark of the man actually, is instead he said, okay, Cesare, who was the chap, off you go and do a risk assessment. And you come back to me, work with our head of physics, work together and see if we actually can do this.
Right.
And he gave him the responsibility to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, this young person, Cesare, it was amazing how much, he completely lifted to the mark. But he's not the only one. I mean, there's a great girl from China who wrote a whole thing this year, a whole EPQ on AI and whether it is influenced by cultural background and genetics.
Oh.
And basically, and it was amazing, and gender. Well, I thought this essay was incredibly interesting. This is not, she's not getting kind of, this is nothing to do with her getting A stars in maths and additional maths and physics. She's gone beyond, and,
show that having that social responsibility as well, and thinking in more depth, like not just.
We underestimate young people. Do you know what I mean? I mean, what do we do with young people? Young people have the most incredible ideas. They do have a passion. They do have things that they want to do. They need guidance. Yeah. That's really important. And we, and help and support. That's what we do. But the last thing we want to do is squash that enthusiasm. We want people to have things that they love and that they want to do. I think it's instrumental in learning. Education isn't just about teaching people how to pass.
No.
That's not a true education. A true education is, yes, we need to do that. Yes, that's our responsibility. We have top teachers. We have amazing resources. We have one-to-one sessions every day. Yes, we can do that. We know we can do that. And as long as, but it is a partnership. You can't just be a recipient as a student. You have to input yourself, take responsibility and work hard. And there's nothing wrong with working hard. It gives you a tremendous pleasure, I think. So, it's a very interesting process. I have to say, as you know, I've worked for many years in education. I've worked for quite a lot of boarding schools. I have never seen anything quite like it. And that's one of the reasons I've loved working, because, they are so, innovative. They don't, they've been number one now for 13 years. Getting to number one is hard. Staying at number one, I think, is probably even harder. But, and that's not what it's about, really. But it's about the fact that they're not complacent as staff members. They're constantly looking forward, and that's what makes the difference. Embracing, AI, big topic. How do we use it? How do we help young people? But also, how do we not disuse it? Because also you don't want kids just writing their essays using ChatGPT. Which we do explain to
but
people
so
if
often,
they do.
like they fall into the pit hole because it's easy, like very easy accessible,
It is.
right? And
but they really
life
shouldn't,
much easier.
because the universities have got a lot of software that actually they know. And also, if you're a native English speaker, and this is a useful thing for people from Hong Kong, if you're a native English speaker, you could spot ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So my background, as you probably know, is I was a BBC journalist. So I write a lot every year, and I do use ChatGPT for a first draft, but it's only a first draft.
Yeah. Because
actually there's a lot more that you need to do, and quite a lot of it also is, you're not based, you sometimes might be factually incorrect.
Yeah, it's really based on what the data is being fed in, to be honest, and so how it's reliable and academic reliability as for university. It's
a useful tool.
Yeah,
I think that's it. It's a tool, but it's only a means to an end. And but it shouldn't be just there's some useful things with it, which is great. I mean, the other thing, as teaching, you always look at different methods of teaching. So in any class, you've got people who kind of react differently. So you've got people who learn visually, people who learn auditorily. You have people who learn from kind of kinesthetic learning, from doing it. I think a lot of people learn from doing it. I think I certainly do. If someone gives me a problem and I actually have to work it out and do it myself, I kind of learn more. But it just depends. There's a lot of people who do very much learn visually. You give them a picture and some colours and they've totally got it. But also we don't teach factually at Cardiff. So what we do is we do a lot of stuff called flipped learning, where because when you've got a mixed ability class, you can't really do this. But in Cardiff, if you remember, they're that top 20%. They're quite bright kids already. We've tested them. We know they can cope with it. So actually what you can do is you can actually flip the learning. So you actually give the students the facts to learn, because actually that's not the difficult bit. But then when they come into the classroom, you then teach them how to connect it, how to extend it, how to really understand that subject in depth. And that's why from the first lesson that they come to Cardiff, they're already working at a high level.
Especially that's a really good preparation for later on in life, because in real life, who really give when you're at work, who's going to give you the facts, who's going to give you the information? And so it really depends on your research skills and all the ability that your skills that requires. And then at the end, it's about you putting them back together, and it's about presenting to your clients or to parents.
Completely, Jade. And you can see all of those skills and how it works in the field of work, because we're older people now and we know that. But that's, obviously we've all got to go through that journey of learning it. And we're talking about, young people from anything from 14 to 19. This is part of their journey. But you can. I think one of the things that Cardiff has done really well is actually start teaching those skills quite early, because it just means that they're already kind of inbound in people's personality. But when it comes down to it, having a passion, having a focus makes all the difference, because you can be slightly ahead and you can start preparing and getting more of those other things under your belt. It's like volunteering. I mean, we get people really involved in volunteering because, one of the things, again, is how do you get young people, to think outside, to work as part of a team, to think about other people, management decisions, things about how you work, how you work with other people. It's not all about you sometimes. Sometimes it's about your reactions to other people. So again, that's a learning curve, because teenage brains go through things at different times, and that's absolutely fine. But I think our role, as educators, is to take these young people and support them. To work out with them what it is that they want to do, to find the path with them, but not to do it all for them. To sometimes give them the responsibility to go and do bits of it for themselves. And then that prepares them much better for universities, where they have to do a lot more for themselves, whether it's research projects, whether it's actually extending stuff. They've already got those skills. The first year at university shouldn't be so hard for Cardiff Sixth Form College students.
Well, there will be a challenge, for some students, because it's quite a big transition. Some people kind of haven't really thought about that, but being in a high school environment, a school environment where the teachers teach, give you the knowledge, but then when you go to university, it's completely it's the way that what you just mentioned. It really requires students to learn and to really do the research and develop their own understanding around and bring it beyond. So it's really good preparation for that. So I think, so I just want to touch on another thing, because you just mentioned, there's a lot going on in Cardiff, especially for the sixth form students. So how students balance between applying to university and alongside with all this busy schedule?
It's a really good question, actually. So one of the things, when you're at GCSE, it is the proportions of things. So obviously, like every school, you have to teach the curriculum. So that's the kind of the first thing, really, and that's obviously the most important. You have to get the academic results. But in GCSE, we encourage people to do lots of sport, music, art, drama, lots of those other, what I'd call extra, clubs and activities, extracurricular skills. And there's house activities and there's social stuff going on that we can, it is very busy, but there's a lot more kind of fun stuff. When you get to A levels, the last two, actually what we say to people is, you may be a fantastic, grade 8 violinist, or you may play in the football team. That's lovely. Keep those things going, but don't try and do everything anymore from an extracurricular. Choose 2 or 3 things that you love and that give you pleasure and that may take you through your life, that give you a spiritual dimension, keep you fit, whatever it is, have mindfulness and well-being. I don't mind what it is. It's something that's personal to you. That's lovely. A lot of our Hong Kong students play music, which is just lovely. We had a whole Cardiff orchestra performing at the Royal Festival Hall last week. One of the Cardiff students came second in Young Musician of the Year. I mean, they're really talented music stuff that's coming on. But actually, you have also got this extracurricular program, this supercurricular program. You've also got this university. So it's finding balances, but also it's finding the direction and doing things that are now towards your career. So if you want to be a doctor, you don't need to be learning how to necessarily do stuff in the stock exchange, or design the inside of an aircraft or whatever it is, So it's actually finding the focus really, and then developing that.
I think we touched on pretty much every topic that how to get into top universities. So before we end this this episode, is there any advice for a student who's going to study in Cardiff or planning to go to study in the UK?
Yes, I think there is. There's a few things. I think it's always nice if as a younger student you might have done summer school. I think sometimes, actually experiencing it is great. I think don't be too scared, parents, about sending your children earlier than A levels. I think that's the other.
How early?
There's some schools that start at some ridiculous time. No, I think 13, 14 is fine. I think that's a good time because as parents you want to enjoy your children too. That's the whole point. So, but I think about kind of it used to be year 9 where we used to send a lot of students. It's now really become, I think, year 10, where the exams become important.
Yeah.
Is a good time. I think, and it's a time where it's a natural thing for 14-year-olds to want to have independence and be away from parents a bit. Sorry, parents, I also have children. I take the same thing with my children. But, it's a time when they're ready, that they've got a bit more maturity, which means that they're normally applying at 13, and which is the kind of, I think, is a fairly transitional year, actually, of coming out of being a little person into being a teenager. It's a big transition year. And by 14, actually, I think they've definitely made that leap. And it is that year 9 where they're changing quite a lot. So it is interesting. So I think that's the first thing. I think about thinking about timing. I think also try lots of things. Don't just do things you're naturally good at. So sometimes, so you might be wonderful at playing basketball. That's great. Really enjoy basketball, carry on. But actually also maybe, I don't know, try debating, try something and do that. And also, I think, and it's very good in Hong Kong, there's some good community and volunteering things that are happening. And that's actually important in terms of your personality and your maturity, about giving back and understanding that as a young person, whose parents work very hard to send their kids to the UK, it's an expensive and long process, and the good thing about in Hong Kong, and I speak to lots of parents who are professionals themselves or in their own businesses, so they've worked very hard. And they want their children to have the best education that they can. And I say to young people, you're very lucky, actually. There's a lot of people in the world who don't have those opportunities. Make the most of them. Enjoy it. I said, if you come to me and you're enthusiastic and you want to throw yourself into it, believe me, you are going to have probably 4, 3, 2 of the happiest years. Learn a lot and get the goal that you want, get to where you want to go to. But also, I mean, one of the things people have been asking me about a lot is pastoral care and well-being recently, because, Cardiff is known for academic results, but puts huge amounts of time and effort into making sure people are happy, supported, confident, looked after, surrounded by people, can talk to people. All those support structures are there because, goodness me, if you're not happy, you're feeling terribly homesick or things are not going right, it's no good. You can't that you can't get involved in clubs, you feel underconfident. I don't want anyone to feel that. And I'm very proud. I mean, Cardiff has won Independent School of the Year for student experience. They are doing some fantastic things which actually are nothing to do with academic results. It's all to do with supporting people. It's all to do with looking forward, particularly on things like some experience and the awards. I mean, they've done students into the most incredible awards. Space settlement design with NASA. Incredible things. And this Cambridge Edge programme at Cambridge campus, I think is really very, very. I mean, when you look, they've been going to things like the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory for the medics. They've been off to Silverstone for the Formula One. They've been to go and see the Freud Museum for the psychologists. I mean, really interesting stuff. I mean, fascinating. And that's another thing with medics. A lot more are doing psychology now, interestingly. So if you're not quite so good at the maths, the further maths physics side, and you're good at writing and good at understanding and arguing, psychology is my fastest growing subject, which is really interesting. And it didn't used to be that. So things are changing. I think parents are incredibly supportive of children, really, here in Hong Kong. I've been here for 20 years, as I said. I've loved it. I've got lots of friends here now, which is so nice. We've got huge amounts of alumni. Talking to parents the other day about running another big alumni event because you've got this huge community. And I also really appreciate it, when parents talk to other parents and give them advice, because it's all, recommendation is very important, really. And
especially when your child is away from you.
Completely. It's much easier than when I was at school, because of course now the combination of WhatsApp, Zoom and FaceTime and all those other things, actually you can keep in contact quite well. Whereas when I was younger, many years ago, you used to have to write letters home. That doesn't happen really anymore. Life changes, and also things like how people live has changed. At Cardiff, and most of our schools in the whole of Duke's Education Group for boarding, most of the rooms are single ensuite bedrooms. It's like a hotel.
But you used to be sharing.
Yes, exactly, sharing big dormitories. That kind of stuff is changing for the better, I think. It's really funny when I took my youngest daughter, who was at Manchester University, and I remember taking her up for her first into halls, with her stuff, and we take her up, and I remember being very quiet because her accommodation at Manchester University was nothing like as nice as the accommodation.
One?
Yeah, I won't tell you because it's not fair.
No, because I went to Manchester.
Did you? It's a fantastic university, but the accommodation was a bit dodgy in the middle of the city. And I thought, gosh, they're so lucky at Cardiff. They have these so much and at Cambridge, the Cambridge campus accommodation is amazing. It's so much nicer. And here I am up in Cardiff looking at this fairly dingy looking room, and thinking to myself, don't say anything to your daughter, don't say anything, because
it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
Yes, it's absolutely fine. You'll be fine. No, to be fair, I think it was her choice as well that she decided to go for the cheapest option. So that was probably her. I think she probably thought she was going to have more fun doing lots of other things.
But there's different lifestyles in university.
It's a different lifestyle in
university.
university. And that's another phase. And another very important phase of getting some qualifications, but also growing up, isn't it? Yeah. Managing your money, making relationships.
That's another topic. That's
another topic for another time. Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for today coming to our podcast. And if you're interested in Cardiff Sixth Form College, please feel free to contact us or contact Henrietta for any further information. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
See you next episode.